Hey guys, Scott here with my impressions of the Trickster after playing him for at least a day. I think I played 6 or 7 games total. I streamed 4 of them. So obviously, again, not a giant sample size. I'm sure there are things that I could do better. I'm not going to pretend I'm a master of this killer or anything like that. But usually, like a sample size, I think of like 5 to 10 games is enough to get the general idea of what the killer is going to be able to do. And I have a problem with the killer. I think it's always weird to say like this killer is just it's a blank but extra steps. Like I feel like people use that phrase too much. But I do want to compare this killer to not the Huntress, which is like the obvious choice, but Plague, because I feel like this killer is Plague, but just simply worse in basically every single way. And I'm gonna go over why that is. So think about what you do with Plague. Plague, you tend to want to get to close to medium range. Then you put the bile on them, they go injured, and then they go down. Here, you want to get close to medium range, hit them with a bunch of knives, they go injured, then you hit them again with a bunch of more knives, then they go down. So the distance that you play is kind of the same. You can't do long range shit with Plague, and you can't do long range shit with this killer to an extent because past a certain distance, your knives have spread. So even if you are perfectly accurate, they're still at a certain distance just going to start going in random directions, and you're going to miss half your shots even if you're perfect. So it's really a close to medium range power, just like Plague's is. Now, let's look at what happened when Plague gets some bile on a survivor. Well, let's say the worst case scenario, she gets only a little bit of survivor, which is the equivalent to basically hitting 1 or 2 knives. When that happens with Plague, even if she abandons the chase, that survivor is still sick. The survivor will get sick and will probably start infecting other people or give you a fountain for you to get the corrupted power, and I almost said corrupt intervention. And so you can start snowballing from that. So compared to the Trickster, who if he throws a couple of knives and then can't close out that chase, the knives just go away and he accomplishes nothing. So I think the first major problem is his knives go away. That should not be. His power is not crazy enough for the knives to deteriorate over time, and fairly quickly too. If you're just at a pretty good loop, you can start losing the knives in the chase that you're still in. And that happened a bunch of times while I was playing Survivor and while I was playing Killer. And that is a huge problem. So I think the knives should not expire. Then you can try to have this whole kind of Ghostface metagame where you have to keep track of how many knives you have on which people. And when you have, 7 knives on somebody, then you can, get a damaging hit immediately. So you can start to try to set up a snowball. That's the only way I can see that this killer can snowball pretty well, unless everyone's just standing still and he's got his showstopper mode on. So that's the first thing. I think he should not have his knives decay over time because, at the worst case scenario, you just, it's not that big of a deal. You just lose a health state. It's not even like you get insta down or anything like that. Like even with, Plague, you would go down in one hit. You just take a health state of damage. And if you thought that was too overpowered, you might make it so it goes away if you're healed or something like that. I don't know, just something like that. I think the knives should not fade away that quickly or at all, really, because the effect is just not good enough for that. So that's the one comparison to Plague. Now, when you compare another thing to Plague, what happens when you are behind somebody? You're basically back revving them, but with your bile. If you get them into the injured state, you just down them. They just die because there's no injured actual. You're not hitting them. You're just putting them into the broken state. And with the knives, it's just objectively worse than Plague in this scenario because you have to hit them with 8 knives, and then also that gives them a speed boost once you actually damage them, as if they were hit by a damaging hit. So already that's worse. And additionally, Plague has unlimited bile, and you run out of knives and have to reload. And Plague's corrupt form is more powerful than his showstopper mode, but I keep bringing up Plague because they do play kind of similarly in terms of the distance that you have to be going. And Plague's bile is just a bunch of projectiles. I don't know if you know, that's how it's coded. It basically shoots a bunch of projectiles linked together by a superficial band. The band doesn't actually make people sick. It's the projectiles that you're firing at rapid fire. So even code-wise, they kind of perform the same way. And that's why I keep wanting to bring up the comparisons to Plague. But in every single one of these scenarios, he's just worse than Plague in every way that I can think of. And I think that is a problem. I think he is too weak at the current state. Now, there are a couple of things about him I found really, really fun, though. His Ricochet add-on is incredibly fun, and I wish they would expand more on that. I think that should be a base kit thing. Because if I can start oceloting people, I don't even care if the killer's not good. That would just be awesome. Now, the thing is, because of how jank some of the hitboxes are, it does accurately reflect based on the angle you throw it at if it's a straight wall. But most things in this game are rocks or trees with weird hitboxes that go in random directions, so it's very hard to actually get a direct hit with the Ricochet add-on. So I would suggest that they make it so the Ricochet add-on is base kit. Ricochets do not give you any bonus laceration whatsoever like they do with the add-on, and they make it so when you ricochet off an item, it fans out into a wider arc, like into like 3 of them. They can still only hit you 1 time, but it makes it so you can actually try to do some crazy shots around loops and like shoot it, on the other side of a teal wall or something like that. Because hitting a tiny projectile with a bounce off of a wall that's not even quite a straight wall, almost impossible to do regularly. The only way you can do it is cheesing it by bouncing it off the ground. So that way, if we remove the bonus laceration, if you bounce it off the ground, there's no benefit. But if it bounces off the wall and splinters off, there's now a benefit for shooting behind walls. You have a big skill cap there. It can make him a lot more interesting to play, in my opinion. Other than that, though, the killer is 110 movement speed as well, so Plague already has that on top of it. So I keep comparing him to Plague because of the way they play, but if you want to even compare it to Huntress, Huntress has the same movement speed as well, but, does not have to throw 8 knives. She has to throw 1 hatchet. Now you might say, well, he has 60 knives. Yeah, but if you think about the math involved, it's like having 7.5 hatchets because you divide it by the amount of times you have to actually hit people. And that's assuming you hit every single knife, which you are not going to do unless you are this close to people because of the spread that you have. So even that is not a scenario where that's realistic. So I think with those 2 changes, that would be kind of a good start. I think maybe making it so he needs less knives to hit would be nice. But if we made it so the knives don't expire, that would kind of circumvent the need for that, I think. So we just do minor changes at a time because you don't want to make him overpowered. Because it seems like the counterplay to this guy is just sort of like counterplaying Huntress or Deathslinger, basically, where you just have to keep out of line of sight, which is a bit easier to do because he's a little bit slower, but not exactly super fun counterplay, in my opinion. But if there was some ricocheting shit involved, that could start allowing for some very cool stuff. Other than that, his perks are pretty good. I talked about that in the previous video already, though. But I definitely found the killer's power itself to be very underwhelming, and I don't see a way, without making changes like this, that the killer will be received as good. Obviously, I cannot see the future. I'm usually right. I will say I was a little wrong with twins because of the way I was playing. I don't like doing the whole proxy camping and, tunneling kind of thing that twins is extremely good at. So I didn't play like that while I was playing her on the PTB, and because of that, my opinion of her was lower. But after watching people that do enjoy or, do play like that and then do very well with her, I will say my opinion on twins was a little wrong because I just wasn't entertaining the correct way to play with her. This killer, I cannot see a correct way to play that is better than what he is currently doing. He has a little bit of an advantage because he can throw his knives like through little slits in the wall, I guess, which is kind of like Deathslinger, and that's neat. But even Deathslinger, when he gets that, he gets a full health state at the very least if they're, if they're at full health. So, yeah, it definitely seems like he needs a decent amount of work. I think the core concept is cool. I don't even care about his appearance. I honestly think he looks pretty neat. So that whole, I don't know why people are freaking out about that so much. I don't care. That he doesn't look like a horror killer. Like we've departed from that station a long time ago with all the ridiculous skins we have now. So I don't know why people are still like saying that's okay. But yeah, overall, I think the new killer is quite weak at the moment. Probably not the worst, but he definitely needs a lot more changes because it's very hard to just go, well, why wouldn't I just play Plague? Why wouldn't I just play Huntress? They get so much more for the exact same amount of effort. So that is about it. I did play Blight and Wraith most of the time, and Blight is awesome now. They added this weird camera bob that I hope they remove. It's completely unnecessary, but the raised height is amazing. The Wraith's movement speed is awesome. So basically every change to not this killer is great. But the killer itself was not very good, and I found myself struggling a lot to do anything effective, even with hitting shots very quickly and even doing what I think you should do with him. But, I could be completely wrong. So we'll see. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, if anyone is finding some other tricks that I am not. But it definitely is very hard to justify playing him over someone like Plague right now. But that is it, guys. And hopefully I will learn a bit more and maybe change my mind, but probably not. That is it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.